PTF here from Woodbine. We're going to get to the body of the show in a minute. We got some great content for you today. Just want to remind folks, Woodbine Mile this weekend. We are going to kick off the show with a little look back to Horseplayer Happy Hour with Matt and I talking about those races. We also have a whole Woodbine Mile Day special with me and Drew Coatney that you can check out as well. That will be separately in audio feed. So if you're watching on YouTube, but you want more content on audio for Woodbine Mile Day, go to inthemoneypodcast.com. Check that out. Also want to give a quick shout out that Odds Honest Truth is back with producer Craig taking the helm along with Rich and previewing NFL action this weekend. You're going to want to check that out as well. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And please also go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, In the Money Media. And the show's going to start right after we roll these credits. Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players Podcast. This is our show for Woodbine Mile Day, and we're doing that gimmick where we're doubling up. This is sort of a Horseplayer Happy Hour preview meets In the Money Players Podcast Late Week Show. PTF here from Bellwoods Brewery in downtown Toronto, getting ready to head up to Woodbine, maybe as soon as to catch the back half of tonight's card, and joined by TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are things?
Doing well, Pete. Looking forward to getting up there myself. I take off on Friday. Oh, I guess if you're listening to this, you probably have already gotten up there. But big day of racing at Woodbine on Saturday, highlighted by the mile. It's always one of the best races of the year, and it's been extremely productive as far as the Breeders' Cup Mile is concerned. So definitely keep eyes on what happens at Woodbine on Saturday.
No doubt about it. And when you say take off, when I'm in Canada and I hear take off, I can't help but think, about SCTV and the McKenzie brothers, but that might be before your time.
Yeah, no, that did not ringing a bell there.
You'd like it. It's funny stuff. Let's talk about these big races at Woodbine on the big day. And you know what? We'll go out of order because I really want to start with a race that I think is worthy of. It's like a true grade one. We have a lot of grade one races in this country, and some are grade one and some are grade one pluses. I feel like we can legitimately call this year's Rico Woodbine Mile Stakes a grade one plus. And we've got Modern Games going to be heading the market here and really bringing top international form lines. This is the kind of stuff that we really, really like to see. I don't know. I'm kind of uncreative in this race, Matt. I feel like if he runs his A race and you look at the figures and form and see what he did within 2 lengths to Baid in the Sussex Stakes, one of the great mile races of the year anywhere, I think the rest might be running for second. How big of a threat do you think Modern Games is in this spot?
Well, he's the horse to beat. There's no question about it. For many reasons, not just the fact that he's coming off that giant effort against Baid, but Charlie Appleby, when he sends horses over that aren't his sort of, let's say, his B or C string. We've seen it over the years with Aidan O'Brien. The B or C string is usually good enough to get it done, but whenever they send over one of their better ones, and it's crazy because Modern Games might be third in the pecking order for his 3-year-olds. But the point is, when the good ones come, they typically fire. And Appleby's numbers over the past 2 years in grade one races in North America are off the charts. I believe he's 9 for 18. 14 of them have hit the board. I mean, they all show up and run. William Buick is coming along. I don't think that's any, and I don't know what's running over in Europe on Saturday, but for him to be making the trip, he didn't make the trip last year, and Appleby swept basically all the big races ongoing. He had Frankie Dettori. This year he's got his number one in Buick. I mean, the race goes through Modern Games, and that's kind of an aggressive statement considering how deep this field is truly. But I think if he runs his A game, I think they're all running for second.
Do you think you're going to end up picking him, or are you going to try to get cute here?
Well, the problem is, from a gambling standpoint, he's 7-5 on the line. I mean, what's stopping him from going off at 4-5 or even money? And is that too short? It's in the eye of the beholder. Maybe he is genuinely a 50% chance in a race like this. I think there are other appealing horses in here. Push comes to shove, I'll probably end up picking him, but I'm going to be more interested in trying to get a little cute with maybe some exactas using some bigger numbers underneath.
Let's talk about some of the horses you think might be interesting to go with Modern Games, or an alternative if he does go off 4-5. I mean, you talk about him as a 50% chance. I feel like that's right, but I also feel like he could be 4-5 or maybe even a hair shorter, and at that point, it might be time to start fishing.
Well, Ivar, I think, makes plenty of sense. Paulo Lobo is taking a bit of a more conservative path with this horse to get to the Breeders' Cup. This is really going to be his first test of the season. And keep in mind, he only ran 3 times last year before a good closing third place finish out at Del Mar. This horse loves Keeneland. So we'll find out about the 1-turn mile at Woodbine, but I think this is going to be a very good means to an end to get ready for the World Championships. Problem is he's 4-1 on the morning line. So you're not really going to gain a ton as far as value is concerned in an exacta pool. Cheryl's Spike, the local hope, I think is a little interesting. If you can make the case that he's just gone off form, and to be fair, he went 7/8 last time, chasing no pace, draw a line through it. He ran on dirt in the Salvatore Mile. He's not a dirt horse. The Turf Classic was over whatever kind of turf you want to call that at Churchill Downs. And then prior to that, you've got a grade 1 win in the Maker's Mark Mile. So,
dirtied up form.
Yeah, very dirty. I could see Cheryl's Spite running a big race. The one that I'm most interested in, I respect Wakanaka. I think the other Team Valor horse is interesting. Homer Screen. Homer Screen on Figs is very light. But if you go back and watch the tape, really for the last 2 races specifically, but I'll even include the first start off, the lengthy layoff in the Daytona going down the hill at Santa Anita. The last 2 races at Del Mar and Santa Anita, Homer Screen has been 6 wide throughout. He's had absolutely no chance, even with the wicked pace to run at and the Eddie Reed. The Reed has come back very live. You've had a number of horses come back and win out of it, including Hong Kong Harry, who came back and won the Del Mar Mile. Almost every horse, with the exception of Masterpiece, has improved their fig next out. Homer Screen's paired up by her tops of 92. I think the 1-turn mile is going to work well for this horse. Joe Bravo ships in. I don't know if he's good enough to win, but I think he could run second or third at 10 or 15-1. And maybe all of a sudden he makes Modern Games a playable piece on top in an exacta or a try.
It's interesting. I think Finest Sound is worth pausing on for a minute. Way less enticing or obvious of a profile. But if you just look at the type of figure comparisons that Stephen Bonnick and our man Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today, do, I think they have Modern Games likely to run about a 101, 102. And I think that Finest Sound is like a 99. So, trips can easily make the difference between those two, especially if you're dealing with one runner that's going to be 4-5 and the other is going to be 8-1. Did you give him any count?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the running style is interesting. This one was forward in that most recent run where he got run down by his uncoupled stablemate. I'll be very curious. This 1-turn mile, I know the Europeans are always going to have a little bit of an edge in terms of stamina. Boy, that stretch at Woodbine goes on forever and a day. And I just wonder, there's other speed in this race. If Finest Sound ends up finding himself up forward, you're going to have other horses like Get Smoking out there who's going to be just cooking on the front end, you would think. You're going to have Town Cruise, the winner of this race last year, who has nowhere to go but forward. I could see things getting a little bit hot. And boy, that final 1/8 of a mile, that's going to be a proper test of stamina. And it's why I think a horse like Modern Games, who, I'm curious, what do you think he is? Like a perfect world, a 1 1/16 type? He's not a 1 1/4 horse. He's probably a little bit more than a miler. Some of these other types I think fit in here very well. I don't know. I guess I felt like I had to get rid of one of the Europeans, and of the 2, I would prefer Modern Games. I will say, though, if that sort of a projection, a 101 or a 102 buyer, is what we're looking at for Modern Games, I would argue that even money is not value, because I think there are other horses fully capable of running a 101 or a 102 in this spot Saturday.
I feel pretty good about that prediction. So it does feel like there's a chance he's going to be overbet. Michael makes a point that Dove made also, the idea that form line specifically from the Sussex really flatters Modern Games, because he was just kind of sucked along, and meanwhile Baid was eased up, and it's not like he's really within 2 lengths of Baid, but the market might bet it, especially here where you don't see a figure for Modern Games in the program. They might bet it like he's really 2 lengths to Baid. And yeah, I mean, it's funny. I already did a write-up for attheraces.com, and I did pick Modern Games. But also, that's also hoping that there's going to be odds against around. At 4-5, I think we're supposed to try to get cute with one of these other horses.
I'm also, it doesn't help us gambling on Saturday, but selfishly, I do want to see a big performance from Modern Games, because this mile division in the States anyway, I feel like is very much throw them up, and how they fall is how they fall. I suppose Casa Creed is in there. Regal Glory is in there. Maybe, some of the horses out west are in there, but we don't have an absolute star in terms of the flat milers. And in modern games, I don't know, not just because of everything that went on at Del Mar last year in the juvenile turf, but the way that he ran, I don't know. He feels like an American horse to me. And I know he is European based, but, you know, I don't know. I just feel like this is what he's supposed to be doing. And to Michael's point, and I kind of touched on it briefly. He was kind of the third stringer for the 3-year-olds for Appleby for the majority of the season. So, I don't know. He may have been the third stringer. I think he's a genuine horse. I think he's very good. We'll find out if he passes the test on Saturday. I feel like when Appleby comes with a good one, they typically run. I'm expecting him to deliver.
We'll see how it all turns out. Let's do a little bit on the other big races at Woodbine on Saturday. We're going to have a full-on baby talk sponsored by Gainesway segment later in the show, but let's do a little bit of baby talk here, talking about these two races. And I think the one that I'm most excited about is certainly the Grade 1 Summer for the 2-year-old colts going 1 mile on the Woodbine turf, where you're going to have another very difficult to contend with Appleby runner in Mysterious Night. But for me, Matt, I have a horse I really like in this spot, and I think it's a write your own ticket, could be any price kind of situation on the number 5, Sammy Stone for Catherine Day Phillips. I just absolutely love this debut run for this Oscar Performance baby, because this was a bit against the flow of the race for sure, not breaking through even fractions at best. And then it was also a day where you just couldn't really close. And this was one of the only horses that closed. Given who Daddy is, I think the turf is going to be okay. We're dealing with a maiden who's only been 6 furlongs on the synth, going a mile. I'm assuming this horse, even in just a 7-horse field, is going to be 15 or 20 to 1. I like Sammy Stone. I'll have Mysterious Night everywhere, but I think this is the interesting runner in the Summer Stakes. Give me some high-level thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the only race that we're covering for TSN is the mile, so I've just done sort of the peripheral work for the two-year-old races to this point. You already brought up Mysterious Night, the fact that Appleby sends one over. We saw what he did last year with what could be argued sort of backup runners, some less than types as far as back home is concerned. This one is a group winner in France. I don't know what the form looks like off the top of my head, but this one is supposed to be a runner, supposed to be, close to that odds-on range. If you're going against, I don't know. I mean, look, Chad Brown at 4, 5, 6 to 1 in a Grade 1 2-year-old race. I know was no match in the Skidmore in that most recent run, but the race has produced a next out winner, a horse that was just only a half length ahead of this one. I don't know. I think he could do worse than take a shot on a praise at a decent price here in this spot for Chad.
That doesn't sound crazy to me. We'll see how they end up betting and what ends up happening there. Let's move on quickly to the Grade 1 Natalma, the sister race for these 2-year-old fillies going a mile on the turf. And my biggest surprise in this race is not who shows up, but who doesn't show up, which is really any invaders from New York or Europe, leaving it, I think, a weaker runner of the Natalma than we usually see. And I think it's going to very much play into the hands, Matt, of number 1, Cairo Consort. This isn't a clever opinion by any means, but she absolutely smashed up the prep race for this. And she's got a pedigree being by Cairo Prince out of the Street Cry Dam, where I think this extra ground is only going to be to her benefit. I think if she runs her race, it's going to be very tough for any of these others. I will probably play one saver on the 2 turns proven number 3, G. Laurie. She's got to get faster. She had a bit of a setup in that debut race. The form is hard to decipher. There have been some horses that ran okay out of it, but under very middling circumstances. We've seen these Grand Motion babies get faster by leaps and bounds with their racing. I'm not ruling out the 3G Laurie, but really, like, the figure monkey in me says, just give it to Cairo Consort now. What do you think?
Yeah, so that was the only concern for me. G. Laurie was the one that drew my attention. That was before I saw the morning line of 4 to 1. To your point, I mean, she needs to improve. I don't want to say dramatically, but pretty dramatically. I mean, especially compared to the inside runner who's got a buyer of 76 in her back pocket. The 57 simply not fast enough. And to your point, you look at the Timeform US fractions as far as the pace splits are concerned, had a pace to run at and did so. But I think back to sharing. who won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf for Motion a few years back. She went into that race on the heels of a visually spectacular victory at Laurel, and she was light on figs, but your eye told you that she was the goods. I've got to go back and watch the tape again, to be fair, but to win by 6 on your debut for Motion, and now he immediately steps her up into a grade 1 going 1 turn, which, it's not the easiest thing to throw at a horse who's going to be making her first start against winners. I don't know. I mean, I think she's the most intriguing one in the race to me, put it that way. I don't know that I would be touching her at 4-1, but, if she runs well here, I think all bets are off. I think, you could be looking at anything, especially come Breeders' Cup time, if we're talking about the Juvenile Fillies Turf.
Good stuff, Matt. And with that, we will, on the late week show, go to a break. As you heard about in the last segment, Saturday, September 17th has 3 Breeders' Cup Challenge Series Win Your In races, all from our partners north of the border at Woodbine. The Grade 1 Rico Mile, Win Your In for the Breeders' Cup FanDuel Mile. Additionally, the Johnny Walker Natalma Stakes and the Pattison Summer Stakes are Win Your Ins for the BC Juvenile Fillies Turf and Juvenile Turf, respectively. All runners get entry fees paid by the Breeders' Cup. All winners, I should say. There's also a $10,000 award to the nominator and a $10,000 travel allowance for horses stabled outside of Kentucky. To learn more about the Challenge Series, go to breederscup.com. This next segment brought to us in part by our friends at the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund. The KTDF is a unique program to benefit owners and their Kentucky-sired, Kentucky-foaled runners. Its aim is to upgrade the overall quality of racing in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It's an incentive program that seeks to encourage owners to buy from Kentucky markets, to board and breed mares on Kentucky farms, to mate them with Kentucky stallions, then to race Kentucky-foaled produce over Kentucky tracks. And the KTDF impact has led to some of these wild and wonderful purses you're seeing, not just at the recently concluded Kentucky Downs meet, but also at the Churchill Downs meet, which we're going to be talking about in this very next segment. Next up on the show, happy to welcome back a guest who did fantastic work for us this summer talking about the West Coast, but he has moved his tack metaphorically back to the place where he works. He is going to be extremely busy covering this September meet at Churchill Downs. We're going to talk about the stakes-laden Pick 5, but we're also going to do that thing where we combine shows in a way. We do a little mashup between our regular late week show and that segment about Churchill, sponsored by our friends at the KTDF, and also a little bit of baby talk sponsored by our friends at Gainesway, because in addition to the two-year-old stakes later in this card, there's a couple of interesting maiden special weights earlier on. So to talk about it all with you, we now bring in Scott Shapiro. Scott, what's going on, man?
What's up, Pete? Good to be back with you. Had a lot of fun with you and Frank over the Del Mar meet for our conversations. Hopefully some of our thoughts help people connect the dots and some of those horizontal sequences. But like you said, it's going to be a fun 3 weeks here at Churchill, then Keeneland, then back to Churchill. Lots going on in Kentucky. And you said it, 2-year-old racing is what highlights both the September and fall meeting here under the Twin Spires. Can't wait to see some of these young babies run.
The first race we're going to talk about is race number 2 on Saturday. It kicks off at 1:14 for these 2-year-old fillies. We're going a mile, and you see the field size in these races. It's just been super impressive, and you make a great point that this isn't some one-off. We're going to be having 2-year-old racing, and we'll be doing more baby talk about these fall 2-year-old races. And I want to talk to some of the trainers, too, about how training patterns have differed, where we're seeing these horses come out a little bit later, probably in no small measure to the way that the Kentucky Derby points are doled out these days, as well as these KTDF inflated, in the best possible sense of the word, purses at Churchill. But let's get your thoughts on this one. Let's start off with who you think the contenders are.
I thought this was about as wide open as it gets. The 1 mile distance is pretty tricky, for any horse, but especially winning at first asking. It takes a serious combination of speed and stamina to get the job done at the 1-turn mile configuration. So I'm going to lean on horses that have experience. There's plenty of them that have one start in here. I ended up with my top pick being number 7, Peacock Lass, for a second-time starter for Rudolph Brisset. Brisset's gotten better with first-time starters, as a lot of trainers have, probably putting a little bit more emphasis, but he's considerably better with second-time starters. With 2-year-old second-time starters, 22%, 250 ROI over a 58-start sample size. And this daughter of American Pharoah, Pete, just didn't have a comfortable trip on debut. It wasn't a lot of, major trouble. But when 2-year-olds, they're going to be at their best when they have stress-free trips, and that definitely was not the case for this one. A half to Doubly Blessed, who was third on debut, earned $339,000. You get Joel Rosario, but this is just one of several in here that I could use. But like I said, I'm going to lean on the horses with experience, because I do think that 8 furlongs at first asking is pretty taxing.
I went in the same direction. I was going to make sure we talked about 2 horses making their second career starts. Peacock Last was one of them that I had on my short list of 2. But the other one, and the top one for me, number 11, Always Laughing, I thought was interesting. Being a first-time starter at Saratoga this year was particularly difficult. And it's funny because the race Always Laughing comes out of is kind of an object lesson in that when you look at Chocolate Gelato, who had that kind of fastest horse in the world hype early at Saratoga, didn't really perform on debut, and then came back and, zoomed in start number 2. So that race came back very fast. That form has been franked by a next out winner. And then Brendan Walsh, different barns have different patterns. Almost everybody gets a little bit better from start 1 to start 2, but Brendan Walsh, one of those trainers where I really expect them to improve significantly from start 1 to 2. Between that and the Saratoga factor, I thought Always Laughing was worth keeping on side. And yeah, I don't have much to add about Peacock Glass, other than I did notice that maybe you see a tipping of the hand in terms of that improvement. Just looking, I didn't look at workout reports or anything, but just looking at the times and spacing of workouts, it looks like, just the fact that there are 3 since the race and the last 2 looking faster. I like that sign. I like that sign a lot. 11 and 7 for me. Any others you wanted to talk about in here before we move on to the 5th?
I picked Always Laughing for 3rd, so a must-use for me, and what I think is a good, a spread race if you're playing the early horizontals. I also picked on number 9, Key to Success, in the mix there, a horse that's second-time starter for Kenny McPeak. Tried the sod at Ellis on debut, was towards the back, didn't do much running, but they went slow up front. Front runners dominated that race. I thought it was a forgivable effort for a barn that does better work with their second-time starters than their debut runners.
Okay, let's pivot ahead to race number 5, where we've got a 6.5 furlong maiden special weight. This time we've got the Colts, once again, an oversubscribed field running for this big old purse here at Churchill Downs. And I'm going to bring you back in. I got a few I wanted to talk about in here, but I'll bring you back in, Scott, to get your high-level thoughts on this one.
Yeah, fun race. I think we could see some really good ones come out of here. 6.5 furlongs. Still a tricky distance for a first-time starter, but much more doable, I think, than the 1 mile, or, much more likely for a firster to thrive first out at this distance. I landed on a Brendan Walsh runner in here as my lukewarm top pick in number 12, Create Trouble. Commanded $870,000 at the OBS April 2022 sale. Son of Into Mischief, so not that surprising, but not overly strong pedigree on the dam side, although the dam was a half to India, who earned over $600,000. When Tyler Gaffleone takes the call for Brendan Walsh, it usually means good things. For Tyler to have a positive ROI with any Kentucky-based trainer says a lot, because he's always, on logical horses, taking money, winning titles here. But 20%, $2.03 ROI over a 358 start sample size. I'm hoping, Pete, that one of the runners that are drawn in off the also eligible list draw into the field. And I say that because oftentimes the far outside post for first-time starters can be tough, because they tend to break towards space on the outside, exactly, which can be challenging. And you see it a lot, and you can easily forget it because it's probably better than the rail, but it can work against the horse as well. So it's Create Trouble for me. I thought Loggins was very interesting for Brad Cox, a horse that I think will get better with distance. The Dam Beyond Blame was 4 for 8, all the work being done best on the turf. The first full for that dam, probably a runner that wants more ground, and as good as Brad Cox is in all categories, certainly much better with 2-year-old maiden special weight runners second time out than first time out. More interesting first time starters, number 6 Cup, as a Cooper Cup seems to get a couple of horses named after him every week now after his incredible year last year, record breaking.
The other Triple Crown.
Yes, exactly. The other Triple Crown. And Easy Action, I thought, was a little bit interesting for Norm Cassie, a Maryland bred that sold for $300,000. Of course, Norm does really good work with first-time starters.
All right, so a few numbers to keep in mind there: 12, 5, 6, and 10. I will talk about a horse that you didn't mention, actually, who I was interested in, and not just because it's a joke that we've been making on the show about his sire's name ever since his sire was a 2-year-old, but Release McCracken, I thought, was pretty interesting in this spot, just off that very, very tough trip on debut against a wire winner when bet hard, and has worked a few times since. You mentioned Loggins already. And then the other one that I'll throw in there is number 2, Communication Memo. These Bolt Doro babies have just been doing so well. And I wanted to make sure we talked about that at least for a minute. I mean, 20% winners with the first-time starters. The industry average would be about 10. That's the kind of thing that makes me take note and makes me think that this is one to at least take a little bit more of an eye on in race number 5. And with that, we'll take a little baby talk break. We're going to get back to baby talk, but for a minute, we're going to pivot and we're going to talk about this stakes pick 5 that kicks off in race number 7 that begins with the Open Mind Stakes going 6 furlongs for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. And I'll go first on this one just because my opinion is so boring, Scott. I just feel like Bell's the One is the fastest horse in the best form. She's not going to get much setup from what we see on paper, but she's shown in the past that she doesn't really need one. I was going to keep it simple and go with Bell's the One in this spot. Is it as simple as that, though?
Well, I think it's a good race to take a stand in. It's, I think, the 8th renewal of the Wisconsin Bell's the One rivalry. And every time you kind of feel like one of them is a step or two ahead, maybe in form, then the other will have a tactical advantage. The other one turns the table. I thought Bell's the One had as good a chance as anyone, but I did expect Wisconsin to bounce back. That was a really poor performance in the Lady Tack, kind of saving ground early, angling out, and kind of being empty. I think she's better than that effort. And her best efforts, at least in terms of thoroughgraphs of late, are better than Bell's the One. I think if she runs back to her efforts prior to the effort in the Lady Tack, she'll get the jump like she normally does on Bell's the One and can get the best of her. I don't love either of them at their price. I think there's a chance, like if Joyful Cadence or Shitara, one of them doesn't break well, the other one could be loose. Club Car, a horse that loves to run second. I'm Wisconsin over Bell's the One in another uncreative opinion, Pete. But, I think the key here is probably not using both of them in a horizontal setting.
It'll be tough, right? I mean, you almost might as well just come back and play the pick 4 if you're gonna try to lock it up. But it'll also depend on how they're bet. And the good thing about the pick 5 is you'll be able to see that. You might be able to intuit. I could see a world in which Bell's the One is a lot shorter than Wisconsin in this spot, with people questioning the form. And in that case, maybe you just go ahead in your pick 5 and single Wisconsin, if that's your opinion. I'm gonna single Bell's the One and go on with life. But I agree that it's, especially if they're both bet like the morning line suggests, very hard to imagine getting any equity kicking off with using both of them in this spot. The pick 5 continues with race number 8, where we've got a grade 3 action in the Locust Grove. Fillies and mares once again. This time we're going a mile and a 16th on the dirt. Who do you like in here, Scott?
I don't love anyone, but I'm going to lean on Envoûtant in here because she just absolutely is a different animal at Churchill Downs. She's 4 for 7 in her career. She's never been off the board. I think she comes in second start of the form cycle, ready for her best effort. An underwhelming effort in the Summer Colony Restricted Stakes event at Saratoga, where there was a pretty favorable race shape, and she's still tired in the lane. But maybe she needed the race. And like I said, I just think she's a different horse over this surface. I respect Played Hard as well. I thought that she really threw down along with Boston Post Road in that race out of the Wilson Chute back on August 4th at Saratoga. A little bit concerned that even with the time, she might regress off of that effort. It was a career best effort on just about any metric or speed figure performance rating you look at. I thought those were the two in here. I know Crazy Beautiful is listed as the 9-5 morning line favorite. I thought she was worth taking on in here. And Gold Spirit was a tiny bit intriguing. Just Todd Pletcher, so good off the layoff. It's been some time since this one ran fourth in the grade 2 Beldame. But Envoûtant for me, lukewarm top pick.
All right, I'm going to call your numbers 2, 5, and 1 in there. Does that sound about right?
That does sound right.
I'll give you a possible excuse for Envoûtant last time. I thought that was one of the days where it didn't appear that the inside was the place you wanted to be at Saratoga. So you couple that extra excuse with the idea of her returning to her favorite racetrack, and I think the trip she's going to get is going to be beautiful too, presumably a very nice forward trip. Stalking Play Hard, who you mentioned. I like Envoûtant quite a bit in this spot. I will probably back up, one ticket kind of thing with Played Hard just because so sharp right now and has worked well since the last run. But I think you and I are basically reading from the same playbook there in the Locust Grove Stakes, which brings us back to Baby Talk and the Iroquois grade 3 action going a mile and a 16th on the dirt for these 2-year-old colts. And really curious to get your thought in this one, Scott. We'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, the Road to the Kentucky Derby 2023 style kicks things, or the kicks off here. Seems like it was just a couple of days ago when Rich Strike shocked the world, but we're already ready to get the next points leaderboard rolling here. And I think it's a top-heavy field this year, Pete, after an underwhelming group in 2021 won by Major General the year before, sitting on go. I think we're ready for a real Derby contender in this year's race. You got Echo again, the 2-1 morning line favorite, Damon's Mound, a perfect 2-for-2, and Jace's Road. I did land on Echo again. I couldn't have been any more impressed. This horse was the talk of the town long before his debut effort on August 20th. And boy, did he come through with flying colors, breaking professionally, breaking well at 3-5 for Steve Asmussen, and never looking back. Huge number on debut. I think give Steve another chance. You know, it's early on here, obviously, but he looks like the kind of horse that maybe could give Steve a chance at that coveted first Derby. I did want to say that I think Jace's Road might go overlooked a bit in here. You know, you don't say that a lot about Brad Cox runners, but I know that Damon's Mound, who's been great for Michelle Lovell, and Echo again, kind of getting all the buzz, while Jace's Road was really good on debut, and I think a horse that will thrive as the distances get longer. But Echo again for me in here.
This is one where before we talked about a situation where I wouldn't advise using the two favorites in a pick. I'm going to probably use the two favorites in a pick here because of where it's sequenced and what my opinions are around it. And you talked about the two horses already, but Echo again, I had heard chatter in Saratoga that they felt like Disarm might be the best of the Asmussen 2-year-olds, but the eye and the clock say it's probably this Echo again. And I think if he runs his race, they're probably all running for second. But I have to use Damon's Mound too, just because I have the sneaky suspicion that both of his runs are a little bit better than they looked, as good as they looked, didn't break first out. And then in the Saratoga Special, that was a day it felt like being inside at Saratoga was advantageous, and Damon's Mound was a bit wide. So I've got to use as well, probably more of a backup, you know, lone A, Echo again, lone B, Damon's Mound for me in this year's running of the Iroquois. And we'll go on to more stakes action here in the Louisbred. Well, that's a new word. Louisville Thoroughbred Society Stakes, 6 furlongs on the dirt, and an interesting field assembled for it. I was pretty master of the obvious, I suppose, in my notes here, and I'll have to look in terms of ticket construction if I'm actually going to be able to follow through with this. But my original thought was to try to just lock up the race 4, 5, 6. If you made me make a top pick, I thought Isolate, the 6 runner, might be loose. I thought that Miles Ahead, the 5, should pull a great trip in behind and has the right blend of speed and stamina for a test like this. But, you know, Necker Island in the videos, he shows that real, like, racehorse kind of fight that I don't really particularly want to have him off the tickets either. So I had written it down with the 6 and 5 as A's and Necker Island as a B in this spot. Do you have any more clarity?
I picked it 4, 5, 6, so it sounds like the same horses, but in opposite order. And I did want to say the Louisville Thoroughbred Society, for those that are not familiar, is a really cool new club that's got a lot of racing feel to it. It's downtown in Louisville. If you're ever around, Gene McLean runs it. And
awesome.
Really good place if you ever want to get some drinks and watch the racing there. That's the place that sponsors this. You know, with Isolate, I don't know if I aggressively want to try to beat him, but he was loose on the lead that day, on a day when I thought it was very speed favoring in the tail of the cat. Now, again, he could be loose on the lead in here, and that was Tom Amos's 4,000th win, if you recall. And, you know, I do think Top Gunner, who was outside, maybe can put some pressure on. Robo Man from the inside, probably not as quick, but might not have any other options other than an aggressive ride from Florent Giroux. You mentioned Miles Ahead, who finally put forth a good effort away from Gulfstream Park last time out when he ran Too Good to Lose in the Kelly's Landing to Aloha West. He may regress, but I don't want to get beat by him at 6-1 on the line. But to me, Necker Island is the clear horse to beat. Chris Hartman, last 5 years at Churchill, 20 for 60, a plus 114.4% ROI. I don't think I want to get beat by Chris with anything at this time of the year. And like you said it, Pete, this is a serious racehorse that has a nose for the wire. He kind of can find his own spot. Doesn't have a ton of speed, but he is tactical enough to not fall too far out of it.
You're making me want to elevate him to the A line. I'll see when it gets down to ticket construction time if I can if I can make that work. I had him a little bit further behind on numbers, but you're making some good points on that. We bring things full circle with race number 11, our nightcap 2-year-old fillies for the baby talk portion of things. We've got the Pocahontas grade 3 going 1.5 and a 16th, a field of 12. Very, very curious to ask you the key question, my friend. How are we going to get paid?
Man, this is a tough race. A lot of speed, as you wouldn't be surprised by, and a lot of them are stretching out, obviously, to 2 turns for the first time. So it's going to be a matter of how many kind of try to take a hold as they try to get that route of ground, how many are aggressively ridden, and if so, who can kind of stalk, pounce, and finish. And I'm hoping number 12, Friendly Persuasion, is the one that can stalk, pounce, and finish. This Daughter of Arrogate didn't run great on debut on the 4th of July at Churchill, but I thought it was extremely noteworthy that she went off the 5-2 favorite in a 12-horse field in Kentucky for Michael McCarthy, who's a West Coast-based trainer. Sure, he takes money from coast to coast, but usually not one to have his runners cranked at first asking. We actually talked about it on the Del Mar Pacific Classic show. He's gotten better with firsters, as we've talked about, a lot of guys trying a little bit more, but it's certainly not his main focus still. Horse chased a fast pace, finished an even 5th, and then came back against the softer group and absolutely crushed at Horseshoe Indianapolis. Didn't get a big number, not surprisingly, but was 1-5. Could have won by more than the 7.25. And I'm a little worried about the outside draw, Pete, but I do think with her tactical speed and all the other speed signed on, James Graham should be able to kind of use that tactical foot and avoid kind of getting over into that second tier, avoiding that wide trip. But this is a tough race. I advise spreading. I think jet setting for Brad Cox has a big chance, should move forward, should appreciate the added ground. Just a Warrior has to answer the distance questions, but has done very little wrong. Those are my top 3 in here. I could definitely see using more, though.
It's such a competitive race that, you mentioned 3. I'm going to mention 3. Only one of the 3 is the same. And so I'll start with that one, who would technically be my 3rd pick, who is the 12, Friendly Persuasion. What I liked about that race at Indy was simply how she shaped like a horse who's going to appreciate added ground. I mean, they went so slow early, cantering around there early, and just finished up really well. And I think you're going to get all of the 8-1 on this one, even though people know how good our man Mike McCarthy is now. I still think between the tricky post and all the other ways to go, definitely a horse that I want to use as an A. I put the 10 runner on top in this spot. Fun and feisty. Took a big step up last time, noticeably so, but had already acted okay going 7 at Ellis. One of the things I like with McPeak, and I talk about this a lot on turf, but he just seems very good getting young horses to stretch out. So if Fun and Feisty can run that race back, I think, she'll be heard from in here. And then we got to talk about Grand Love. So if Grand Love is really 9-2, I would be all over her and make her a confident top pick. I worry, based on some of the data that I'm looking at, that she's going to be bet very, very hard, much harder than that. And what will scare me about that is I think she was sort of doubly flattered the last day by being on a track that seemed to favor speed and being on like the right part of that track that seemed to favor speed. So I don't think she's as good as some of the numbers that are being associated with her. But hey, if she's going to be any kind of price based on the figure, based on the fact that she might have a pace advantage, Rosario in the iron, so good at rationing out speed too. Tough guy to finish past in the lane. 10, 5, and 12 is how I'm going to call it. What did you make of, before I let you go, what did you make of Grand Love in this spot?
I thought she was a use in here. Like you said, I think there's a good chance she goes off favored with the big number and the barn. And she didn't take a lot of money. That was the day after Echo Again ran, who obviously was hammered, and this Con runner didn't take very much money. She absolutely popped the gate, got a huge jump on the field that included Rarify, who was the Have to Run Happy, if I'm not mistaken, right, for trainer Wesley Ward. 2 straight seconds for that well-meant runner. And she was tired in the lane. Now, it was her debut, and she was going 6.5. I don't want to hold it against her too much. But with other speed signed on, if she gets caught up in an early battle, I'm worried about her getting tired in the lane. But she's not a horse that I'm excited to take on or anything. I just, in a wide open group, opted for others to put, in that top couple spots.
As ever, got to let price be the guide. And of course, this will be a blind leg if you're betting the All Stakes Pick 5. So it gets a little bit tricky. I was just going to use as an A and hope that the money was there. I think you make a great point. I wouldn't worry that much about the tepidity of the betting. We see this, especially to meet like Saratoga, when there's a real talking horse like the Ward Run Happy. It's almost like tilts the tote board because there's so much, so much money turning up. And there was something else in there that took money, because I remember thinking that even just relative to the ridiculous amounts of hype around that Ward runner, I remember thinking that even she was a little bit under bet compared to what I was expecting. It was just one of those weird Saratoga races where there's so many stories around that
Right.
I don't know how much signal we can really devise from the tote. Anyway, just one of those things, one of those fun things at a meet like Saratoga that to look at. And I always love, and it's it can be a fool's game, believe me, but always love trying to look at the tote board for a signal, not just in those races, but then going forward, where you sometimes can get the sense, maybe that horse got a little lucky, maybe not that much was expected, et cetera, et cetera. But in this case, we'll see what price she is on Saturday, and we'll hopefully be able to take down this late pick 5, and really appreciate your insight on these 4 baby races. Elsewhere in the show, actually, it'll have run already. We'll have had Matt and I talking about the Natalma and the summer, major Breeders' Cup implications there. And yeah, we kick off the road to the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks in earnest on this Saturday. Scott, let people know where they can find more from you.
Yeah, Pete, always fun joining you and chatting through the races. You can find pretty much everything I do on my Twitter account at ScottShap34. And then, of course, for the Churchill Downs September and fall meet, you can find me along with Joe Christofak and a third analyst that kind of bounces around on the simulcast feed there. If you have Roku, you can find it on there if that's the easier way to go. If not, you can find us, anywhere you watch the races. But always, like I said, always fun joining you and chatting through these, and really excited to see some of these 2-year-olds next race.
Are you guys doing expert picks for the Churchill fall meet?
Yes, good setup here. I almost forgot. Expert picks, Churchill Downs on the Twin Spires app and on twinspires.com on the website. Just under the quote-unquote expert picks video. Click on it. About a minute or so videos where we touch on the top 3 picks. Maybe it'll help you get to a horse you weren't going to get to. Maybe you're looking at a race where you want to spread. You don't want to leave off a horse. Maybe there's a story or two that we can help you out with.
I got recognized at Saratoga in the boxes, and I know you have to go. I won't tangent too long.
No worries.
But somebody was like, that voice. And it was like, and I was hoping it was going to be podcast, of course. And it's like, you used to do the expert picks on Twin Spires. Like, yep, that's me. Great.
It's funny where you hear things from people. I mean, you're always like, you always think there's like 1 or 2 places that's the place where someone's going to recognize you. But you get, you're the guy that was on this pod, yep, back in October. And I'm like, oh yeah.
The most humiliating for me like that, and then I promise I'll let you go, was at Ascot. Somebody came up to me and was like, I love the podcast, and was just, I was 100% sure this was a In the Money Media fan. And no, they were referring to my appearances on the Final Furlong podcast over my friend Emmett over in Ireland. I mean, hey, as long as it's always nice when people appreciate the work, and we appreciate the work that you do, Scott, and we'll have you on very soon, because we're going to be working with Churchill and KTDF throughout the fall.
Sounds good, Pete. Anytime. Always fun chatting, like I said. And should be a fun card on Saturday. 11 races, some 2-year-olds, some older stakes runners. Hopefully we can make some loot.
Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Gainesway, doing something a little bit different with the Baby Talk segment, in that we're spreading it out over the entire show because we have such good 2-year-old racing all over the country. We thank our friends from Gainesway for sponsoring. From top international bloodlines to rising stars on American soil, Gainesway's put together a stallion roster that is not only primed for future success, but currently making its mark on the track, led by Caraconti's rising star, Spenderella. Make sure to check out their entire stallion roster for 2022 and see for yourself the power, passion, and performance of Gainesway. For more, go to Gainesway.com. Next up on the show, I've magically transformed to where I'm now at Woodbine. I was going to try to sit out on their Stella Artois patio to do this hit, and I thought the perfect shot. It was the track lined up behind me, and then the beat kicked in. They turned on the music, and that just wasn't going to happen. So I think this is Sandy Hawley's old desk, where I found in the bowels of the building here, as you can see from the poster behind me. I got to meet Sandy at the Derby this year. Super nice guy. So yeah, that's where that's the kind of energy I'm bringing to this next segment of the show, where we will not be talking about Woodbine, but we will be looking down south to the Jersey Shore to talk about a win early pick 5 and a pretty interesting stakes race that's had some Breeders' Cup implications in the last few years, the Nownownow Stakes. And to do that with you, we bring in our man when it comes to all things Monmouth and typically Naira as well. Nick Tammaro, what's going on, my man?
Doing great. Certainly not worried about the noise on the patio. down here in my humble abode in Houston, but still living it up.
Did you get involved in that Canterbury contest last night? Were you playing in that at all?
Unfortunately, yes. I've actually just gotten off the plane back from Minnesota, so it was a very, very early morning, and it was a relatively late night. I did hit a couple of races, but mainly just hit my head against the wall. So it was great to get to Canterbury, though. Had never been, and strongly recommend it to anybody out there. A couple of listeners came up and said hi to Marshall and I, and we really enjoyed that. So it was a good time, and I would certainly go back in the future.
Yeah, they've got another contest this weekend live only at Canterbury, that Dog Days of Summer. Folks should look to check out canterburypark.com for info on that. Yeah, I was surprised at how high the scores were. You know, I mean, was that part of the problem? Did you have to press beyond where you thought you were going to, or did you just not have the right opinions?
Were they? I mean, we were a $2,000 bankroll to start. So it was about 4.5 times the bankroll.
Yeah, I feel like, well, I think it was just last year they were uncommonly low. I think that's probably what it was.
Actually, last year the winning score was 12.
But the 11th or the 10th last year, I thought was.
That was the difference, right? And I think that had a lot to do with there was basically no prize pool or very, very little prize money. So I think everybody was shooting for 10th. So yeah, you're right on that angle for sure. I actually didn't. There was a pretty big shakeup on the leaderboard too. It looked like in the last couple of races. So I'd have to look a little bit more, but yeah, it was, you know, I mean, any opportunity to turn 2 into 6 and get a BCBC, you know, everybody's going to take that. So I think the concept is great. Jeff Madej is at Canterbury is terrific. So a big fan, and the facility was great. Have you been before?
I've never been. It's always, you know, it's like this weekend typically, and it makes it. Last year it was staggered, I think, where I could have gone, but I haven't been able to make it. But I'm gonna have to make it more of a point. I mean, they've been partners now for 3 years. I love the 10% low takeout things. They're doing a lot of cool stuff. And I'd say this contest, if they're going to run it back next year, and I imagine they will, it's one that contest players, you'd encourage the idea of maybe circling it on the calendar. And heck, if it's Woodbine Mile week, you could do the double, potentially get from Minnesota up to Canada. It's not that far.
Yeah, it's probably not that hard. It's really easy place to get to, and about 20-25 minutes from the airport. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. The facility is great. Reminded me a little bit of Lone Star. But it's got a lot of outdoor seating, a lot of cool bars and little, you know, lounge type things that you've got around the facility for the crowd that they're trying to attract. So yeah, I'm a fan, and anybody who's in the area that's listening, we certainly are glad to have you. And anybody who's ever thought about going closing nights tomorrow night, and then they'll get started again next May.
That's right. We'll hopefully be back in business with them. But that was an unscheduled tangent in our Monmouth Park sequence here. Monmouth running for a few more weekends before action shifts over to Monmouth at the Meadowlands and that short but interesting all turf meet.
This is it, actually. This is the last weekend.
Oh, this is it. Okay, I thought there was one more. The closing weekend, our last Monmouth at Monmouth show for a minute, and then it does sound like we're going to have Monmouth at Meadowlands coverage as well, continuing apace.
Great. Yeah. I suppose that means that they're going to pay out to Jersey Shore 6 on Sunday too. I don't know where that's at carryover wise, but it's usually a bet that doesn't get hit very much. I will look at that as we speak.
Yeah, let's take a look, because that could be where the production meeting in the middle of the show, plus content, if not reaching out to our friends over there and seeing if they want to do a show. I'm not actually traveling Sunday. I'm going to do the Sky Shift from here. So it'll be very, very easy in the morning to do a podcast.
Well, it's at 44,000 coming into Saturday. So, I mean, it should be 55, 60,000 closing day.
Note to self, text Brian, see what's going on.
Yeah.
They want us to do anything for that. In any case, we'll be covering it somewhere on Plus, if not on these airwaves. But we are here today to talk about this closing Saturday Monmouth Park card, and it starts with the Win Early Pick 5, which will be among, if not the nation's earliest Pick 5 on Saturday. 12:15 is the kickoff for this maiden claimer. 3 and up fillies and mares going 5.5 on the dirt. Let's talk about this one, Nick, from a pick 5 perspective, but also from a fixed odds perspective. I know you've got the prices from bet makers. Did they agree with the line maker that the number 7 Kamenchek would be a relatively heavy favorite in here?
Yeah, not quite as heavy, probably around 3-2, somewhere in that range in our language, plus $2.50 on the decimals. I'm a cutie, also going to get plenty of support, probably somewhere around 3.6 to 1 decimal wise. New York Fancy will get, I'm sorry, Bayou Melody will get a little support as well around the $5.50 range. So I thought actually the interesting horse from a win early pick 5 standpoint, and I definitely want to use Kamenchek, was the 6 New York Fancy, who's cutting back in distance from Mike Deeney, who finished second last time out. She's slow, but they're all pretty slow. She's going to have to improve, no doubt about it. But there's a pretty decent amount of front end speed in here. And I think that could set things up for one that comes from a little bit off the pace. So I'm going to start the win early pick 5 with the 6 and 7. Kamenchek is clearly the horse to beat. Definitely the best on paper, but this New York Fancy might be the right alternative.
We got 2-year-old maiden special weight colts in race number 2, going a mile on the dirt. So that's interesting as the distances start to get longer. I'm not sure we've ever done a show, Nick, where we covered more 2-year-old races than this one. It's appropriate. We do have a baby talk segment for today as well. Who'd you come up with in here, and what does the market look like?
Yeah, we really need to freshen the ranks in a lot of these places so the 2-year-olds come in a timely manner. This race is interesting because Juan Avila has a first-time starter, and obviously, as we talk about pretty frequently, his horses are being priced in a much different way than everybody else's in terms of how short they go, especially with first-time starters. So they have impetued the 2 penciled in right now at $4, but we're going to see about $2.80 on the 9, easy as ABC for Kelly Breen, 1 of 2 for Kelly Breen. I think this one's going to be the more fancied for a variety of reasons, one of which is the recent bullet workout. The fact that Jose Ortiz, who is in to ride the stake race that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, he's on this Son of Arrogate. And I think that the second out effort on the turf was improved enough to make him a pretty solid favorite. The other horse I think who will get some measure of support is going to be the 5 Icy Intent, the other Kelly Breen, who is actually a very well-bred son of Frosted, out of the talented mare Chocolate, who won the Fall City, among a couple of other stakes races. She's a Stoneway homebred, who's obviously been one of Kelly Breen's better clients. She went off 2-1 in her debut, at 2-1, his debut, I should say, and ran a credible race behind El Decimi, who is in the Nownownow as well later today.
So 9, 5, and 2, is that the recap of what you'll probably be doing for the win early pick 5 here?
I'll probably just go 5-9. I mean, I'll probably draw the ire of Dallas and everybody else in the fixed odds escapades and say, oh, you're throwing out Avila. But yeah, I'm not going to assume that every one of his firsters is going to be solid. But look, I mean, when they have taken action on this guy, his horses have run very, very well.
Something to pay attention to. And if you're playing the win early pick 5, go to the MonmouthBets.com website and you can see where those prices have moved on that Avila runner in there, as well as all the rest. The hinge of the win early pick 5 is race number 3 and up fillies and mares, maiden claimers, $20,000 a mile on the turf, full field of 11 here. What are you thinking win early pick 5 wise?
Yeah, this is a race where I think you could really throw a blanket over a number of them. So it's a good opportunity to take a stand when everybody else is going wide. I'm going to use the 1 and the 5, Capture My Dreams and Judgment Time. The slight favorite in the fixed odds market is going to be the 7, Sarah Splendor, who comes down from Saratoga after 3 really very modest efforts for Jorge Abreu in New York, none of which were particularly impressive. I thought the interesting thing about Judgment Time is that she seems to have some speed. Back in for a tag, racing against cheaper horses than she ever has before. This just feels like the right kind of fit. And the 1, Capture My Dreams, I like the last race. I thought this horse didn't get out of the gate all that great, ended up wide the whole way, put in a move, flattened out a little bit. It's one of those kind of sneaky trips that really wasn't all that bad, but there was enough trouble along the way to upgrade her next time out. Again, I mean, trying to go thin where everybody else goes particularly wide. So 1-5 is ace for me, and I'll throw the 7 as a backup just on the class angle.
Makes sense. Though I think there's a logic to try to oppose Sarah Splendor, I think. And I feel like so many of these Abreu runners, they come fully formed or close to it. So I'm not sure. He's not, from a race them into shape outfit, I think the 7 would look a lot better than coming from this barn to me, to my.
Oh, they're usually ready. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that, I mean, in her 3 races so far, her best race was her debut. And she's gone backwards very, very quickly. So this is just a matter of how much better do you think 40 maiden claimers? And I will say that was a particularly weak 40 New York bred maiden claimer she's coming out of. So it's a tough sell, I'd say, as the favorite. But given that so many of these rivals are just knock around Jersey types that haven't really been all that impressive, she gets some credit.
What other horses are going to be taking money early in the fixed odds line? The bet makers are predicting will take money early anyway. What do the other prices look like in this open looking race?
Yeah, both of my two Capture My Dreams and Judgment Time are going to be about $5.50. We'll probably see $7 or so on the 10 Dancing Sophia. So it's going to be a wide open board. I mean, they've got it penciled in right now to open it at Sarah Splendor $5. So I mean, it's one where you can literally throw a blanket over all these.
Jersey Breds take center stage in race number 4, where we've got an allowance race going 1 mile and 70 with 78,000 in the pot and a field of 7. Let's start with the fixed odds market here. Looks like on the morning line, Irish Meadow installed as the 2-1 favorite.
Yeah, $2.60 on the fixed odds market. So pretty heavy favoritism here for this veteran son of Il Postino, who comes in off a good third place finish in the Charles Hess for Claudio Gonzalez. That was a race where he was sent off at 8-1. Put in a really good late bid into a very slow pace too. Looks like it's going to be a much better setup this time around. And there's no He's Pure Gold or Golden Brown types in here. So this is a much, much weaker assignment. And I think based on the improvement he's shown in his last 2 starts, he's kind of become the now horse in the Jersey bred ranks outside of that top tier. So I think he looms very tough to beat. I'll single him in the win early pick 5 and just try and get by. I think the dangerous horses, both from a pick 5 standpoint and fixed odds market wise, are the 3 and the 7. The 7 Last Romance is going to be about $4.50. Paco Lopez with a speed horse on the outside. A little worried about the stamina concerns, I guess you could say, on this horse. He's never only gone long once. It was around 1 turn. We'll see if Paco can hold him together the whole way. The other speed is the 3 Optic Way, who was a good second behind Irish Meadow last time out, in for the tag once again, but they seem to have found the right class level for him. No reason not to at least back up with the 3 and the 7, who both seem very logical.
We wrap up this win early pick 5 with a big full field in the $16,000 claimer going 1 mile and a 16th on the turf. Nick, how are we going to get paid?
Yeah, this is not for the faint of heart, no doubt about it. And I'll tell you the other thing that's kind of funny about this race is that it seems like a lot of the talent is drawn to the outside. We were talking a little bit about Jorge Abreu. I think he's really well represented here with Noble Conquest, who's going to be about $4.60, $4.50 on the fixed odds market. Comes in at a morning line that I thought was a little too high at 6-1. I mean, he basically won very easily at this condition last time out. This is a race that has an abundance of early speed too, so he's really in line to get a very, very nice setup. And he was the kind of horse that if you're a Timeform US player last time out, you loved him because he was going into the teeth of a very slow pace. 2 starts back, they flew in front of him last time out, and he capitalized. So Luis Cardenas, who's certainly ridden well in New York over the last couple of years, is on board again for a Jorge Abreu. I would think Noble Conquest will come back and be very, very tough. I think the other horse that I want to try and use in some capacity is the 11 Shimmering Light. First off, a claim by Darian Rodriguez. This is a very good barn off the claim. Not as much on the turf as on the dirt, but just seems like this could be a really interesting horse with a little bit of move forward in him. Coming out of a good barn, no doubt about it. But when a high percentage trainer claims with intent, for example, takes a horse like this and goes right to the turf, you wonder if they've seen something and they had this in mind right from the outset. So I'll use the 10 and 11 in the win early pick 5. I'll also throw in the 9 Prince of Caps, who I have no argument with. Beautifully bred Vincent Scuderi runner, who of course is a half to Paula Silver Lining and Dad's Caps. He's done more work on the turf, not quite as good as Paula Silver Lining and Dad's Caps, but he tells his friends that they're his siblings. They don't tell their friends that he's their brother. But I don't want to hold that against him too badly. But yeah, really fun way to finish it out. And another fixed odds market where we're going to be looking at about $4.50 on the favorite and 4 to 5 horses under $10.
All right. So hopefully 10, 11, and 9 to get things done. You think you use them pretty equally?
I would. Yeah. I mean, I might click a couple more on Noble Conquest. But mainly I'd want to use the 9, 10, and 11 sort of the same way.
Let's go to the stakes race later in the day. Race number 11, 4:53 Eastern. This is one worth setting your alarm for if you're not going to be completely focused on Monmouth, because I think once again we've seen this race have some Breeders' Cup implications, or at least send some starters to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf in the last few years. This is the Nownownow Stakes for these 2-year-olds going 1 mile with 500,000 in the pot. Who do you like in here?
Well, of course, it yielded the post-time favorite in last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but we won't talk too extensively about that because that will certainly, as I said before, draw the ire. That will draw the ire of horse players. the purse obviously facilitates an opportunity for people that are looking for cash. And Oxymore was purchased privately after his debut. So I'm sure the connections, while recognizing they probably have a Breeders' Cup worthy horse, can get him there and also make a good chunk of their money back, if not make all their money back, with a $500,000 purse. And that's with the 7 Oxymore, who also gets to get treated with Lasix, which he has not had so far in 2 prior starts. Monmouth does not have the Lasix program that some of the other entities around the country do. He looks like the main speed, right? The concern that you always have with horses going from sprints to 2 turns at this stage of their careers is that it's a big ask. You know, it's a lot to go from 5.5 to a mile, especially in a scenario where he could run into a little bit of pace pressure. I would imagine that Power Attack and Torone and Conman to some extent all have a pretty decent amount of early speed. So whether he can withstand the pressure and is really the question. He's a deserving heavy favorite. He's going to be installed in the fixed odds market at around $2.80, 280 decimal. So he's a very solid favorite. El Decimi, who I brought up before for Juanavila, is a Cairo Prince going to the turf. Cairo Prince progeny do very well on the lawn, and he's going to be the second choice at about $4. That's probably adjusted downward just a tad because of Avila. I'll tell you the interesting horse in here, Pete, and I know he's coming out of a race that's significantly weaker than this. He's also a maiden still, but Web Slinger was supposed to win last time out, and this is a race where Close the Game Sugar, who I'm sure you're a very big fan of the name, you being a Timmy Trumpet kind of guy and a Met fan, but Web Slinger was supposed to win. He got in trouble at a couple of key times during this race and ended up getting free late. It's very interesting to me that with Conman, these connections run Web Slinger also. Might not necessarily be able to win, but this is a horse who I think really should take on the extra ground with no issue. And he could be a really good exactor, a trifecta filler at a nice price.
Yeah, I think that's a neat call. Mets hunch play aside, Constitution, Hard Spun Dam, the extra ground should be in his favor.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you got a lot of positives there. I wanted to ask you what you thought about Bramble Blaze, who I like the fact that he'd had the run over the course going a mile. And thought he might be able to use that to good use, and seemed like one that could sneak away somewhere around that 6-1 maybe of the morning line and offer a little bit of value. What's your thought on Bramble Blaze?
Yeah, you know, it's tricky because the buyer figures and really pretty much all speed figures on 2-year-old routes, turf or dirt, between August and September are always going to be low. Right. These horses are taking on so much more ground than they have before in a competitive race. And so I would never want to hold that against Bramble Blaze, especially because this horse came from pretty deep in the pack to get that win. You look at a horse like Love Me Not, who broke his maiden in a mile on turf. He got a 67. Bramble Blaze got a 56. I will admit I've not looked back to see if anybody has validated those figures one way or the other. But feels like a horse with upside, right? A Ballybrit homebred from Mike Deeney that looks like he'll probably get better as time goes by. This is a barn whose horses usually do, and he certainly had some precocious 2-year-olds over time as well. So, you know, I think the key to this race is that if you believe Oxymore is going to get a little leg weary from potentially facing some early pressure, then there's really about 3 or 4 interesting horses given their respective prices.
It feels like a spot where I want to try to have the best speed. I think we have a pretty good idea who that is, and then maybe make a guess at the best closer in case. And I think you make the key point about one of the reasons I love betting races like this is, you know, I love to take figures as literally as possible. Anytime you can reduce something to a number in this game and simplify things a little bit, I think it's a good thing to do as a horse player. But the time that I don't want to do that is with these sprinters stretching out for the first time. I don't want to take those figures literally for the reasons that you were indicating. I pulled up some form here. Let's take a quick look at how the form is working out in that Bramble Bays race. Not good. 4 have come back. Nobody's hit the board. So that's not great. But at the same time, I think I'll probably still be a little bit forgiving and look to throw that one in for a minute. And the other form, the El Decimi race, that nobody's come back yet. So we have no line on that form whatsoever. So I don't know.
And I think your sentiment is exactly right that, you know, this is not the standard situation where you see a disparity in figures between Oxymore and everybody else, right? If you were looking at a race where you saw a horse that was getting, you know, mid-70s figs and everybody else was in the 50s and 60s, I mean, you would say they were a total layover. Oxymore is a deserving favorite, no doubt about it, but he is not as dominant as he would be in more of a traditional type of fashion.
In terms of the notes I'm putting together for this race, I just wrote down the 7 as a technical top pick with the 10 as one to feather in. Would you want me to list any more numbers?
No, I mean, I would tell anybody betting at intra race that, the play is kind of to do a little 4-7 over 10 because El Dicimi has turf pedigree as well. So, I mean, it's going to be no big surprise if this horse ends up moving forward. This is an old Josephine Abercrombie pedigree on the dam side. The dam was a turf winner. So I wonder if Juan Avila had this kind of in mind. There's 3 turf winners, I think, on the dam side, two winners at least. And the second dam Confessional was a really nice Pinot horse as well. So there's reason to believe this horse will get better on the turf.
And that's how we close the most spread out baby talk segment we've ever done, with a fairly deep dive on the Now Stakes. Hopefully some good info in there that will help folks along. Nick, appreciate your time. And yeah, let's commit to doing something on Sunday. We'll figure out what it is with that mandatory payout.
As long as I'm not committed by Sunday, then we'll certainly commit to do something.
We'll commit if we're not committed.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Cool. Thanks.
In the Money Media is proud to be partnering with the Caesars Trotting Classic on September 23rd. So coming right up 1 week from when we record this on Friday the 16th, guests can enjoy the very best harness racing has to offer, with an estimated $1.4 million in purses in Grand Circuit action on the card, highlighted by the 5th edition of the $200,000 Caesars Trotting Classic. Witness the world's fastest standardbred as Bulldog Hanover makes his highly anticipated return to Harrah's Hoosier Park for the first time since his Dan Patch Stakes victory in the $175,000 Harrah's Hoosier Park Pacing Derby. In addition to the Grand Circuit racing action, guests can enjoy handicapping contests, cash giveaways, food trucks, family fun entertainment, and more as part of Harrah's Hoosier Park's community night at the races during the Caesars Trotting Classic card. Sounds like a lot of fun. You're going to be hearing more about the Caesars Trotting Classic on September 23rd on the In the Money Media Network. So as you can see, I'm running around, and we decided to bring in a guest host to do our Naira spot this week. Guy I always love to have on these airwaves. You can check him out on his very own Stewcast as well. I now present to you our friend, Alan Studer.
All right, everybody, welcome in. Big show for you today. Pick Six happening at Aqueduct, but it's Belmont. It's scary, it's weird, but it's going to feel comfortable. It's going to be an electric day, an electric factory at the Big A. And I'm happy to tell you about it. No, I'm not PTF. PTF called me up on his private jet on the PJ flying north. He said, hey, I need you to come out of the bullpen, Stu, and I'm going to play Timmy trumpets for you, all that good stuff. I came in. I'm here today. Happy to be with you, Stu from Stewcast Sports. And thank you again to PTF. Good luck. I know Colonel Mustard cosplay convention. I hope you get first place. I think you're going to do great. You certainly have been prepping all year for it. And preparation leads to perspiration, which leads to winning. My guest, the other beautiful baby on the other side of the screen, he is the host of a podcast that you got to listen to. Philly Mongos is the name. Look it up. He is salt of the earth. Some say the king of Freehold Raceway. He is Rob Romano. Rob, what a beautiful time this is. We're here. We're on the In the Money Network. I mean, who's got it better than this?
Stu, I mean, what could be better right now? My Phillies in the wild card. Eagles are 1-0, and I'm ready for Aqueduct. I mean, who's not fired up for Aqueduct? I mean, this is where the real gamblers are at. If you never spent a Saturday in January and February at Aqueduct, folks, what can I tell you? You know what I mean? This is where it is.
And folks, for our friends on YouTube, no, I'm not broadcasting from heaven. I did not pass away. That's what it looks like in the background. It's just sunny, and we got sunny days ahead here at the Big A. We start with a 2-year-old race, 95,000 main special weight, going 6 furlongs on the brown stuff, aka the dirt, the real stuff. Rob, give it to me. Who do you like here?
Stu, starting out here, these maidens are always, they're coming back now from Saratoga. A lot of these horses were either big favorites, or a lot of them weren't able to run. The first time starters you're going to see here, obviously, maybe they weren't ready. They couldn't get in, yada, yada, yada. but you're going to have some good maiden races here. I mean, it really is. It's a stacked field. I always like horses with a little bit of experience in this race. I kind of like the Trombetta horse, Bolsara. She got slammed out of the gate. You know, when you go back and watch these replays, especially if you have Formulator or something like that, watch the head-ons. And she got slammed out of the gate, was on the rail. Thought she raced good. You know, I thought she was coming at the end. I mean, the line doesn't show it too much, but I kind of like her second time out. I like that Saez sits with her here and comes back. I also like Linda Rice's horse, Bingsky. She's great second time out. Listen, that's where she wins. I mean, her numbers are phenomenal second time out. That filly drew outside for DJ Stables in her first start, came closing at the end, raced decent. You get Irad back up. Those are the two horses I like in there. Just to mention, obviously, you're going to mention it too. The two horses on the outside, Flavian Pratt up for Chad. You always got to watch. I mean, Flavian's red hot. The $625,000 purchase, and you got Todd to the outside of that. I mean, what race is Todd Pletcher losing right now? I mean, he wins everything, and always look when Todd works him out once on the turf. It's always kind of interesting.
Yeah, you read my mind. I'm not getting too creative here like you did. I like the number 3, Padma. That first one, I wonder if that's a key race to come out of, was Socially Selective, who just buried the field. And then I'm going to go with this Chad via Cult, which is, you know, kind of fitting since you're wearing the Eagles hat and they are a cult. So the 7 Half to Exalting, if you remember Exalting, a real nice horse, graded stakes winning horse. I'm going to take a shot with the 7 and the 3. Rob, I like your plays with the 2 and the 5 here. Hopefully one of us hits, because that would be a real shame. You would hate to see it. Race 7, the Jockey Club Oaks. I'm going to make it real simple. Give me Chad all day. Now, this could be a real big problem for me, or I could look like the smartest guy in the room. I just love McCulloch, however it is. It's just winning time. It should be on HBO. I love this one in this division. With the moonlight, it's not showing up. That's all I needed to see. Rob, where are you going?
Yeah, breaking news. Stu had $2 to show on Secretariat in the Belmont.
More news
4
at
to 5.
11.
Yeah, 4 to 5 right out of the chute. I got to be honest with you. For 4 to 5, I wasn't in love with McCulloch's last race. I mean, she raced good. Don't get me wrong. She finished second, but I thought she'd have a little more pop that day. Don't forget, in the Belmont Oaks, she was 6 to 1 that day, but she did get the money. I don't know. Maybe she bounced a little bit off of that race in the Belmont. At Belmont, I should say. But I'm just not in love with her at a short price. A horse I really love in here, one of my best bets of the day at a price, is Miss Yearwood. Guys, go back and watch that Black Eyed Susan. She was down on the rail that day, got bumped out of the gate, and then for some reason turning for home. She was loaded with run. Leparoux took her from the inside to about 10 wide. Finishing up, I thought she was pretty strong that day. Came back with a nice race in the Monomoy Girl at Churchill. And then the race at Ellis Park was absolutely fantastic. She was flying at the finish, seemed to really take to the turf. And, one thing with Ian Wilkes, he's the kind of trainer, his horses get better with starts. He's not a guy you're going to bet first time out. To me, this filly looks like she's really improving, and I like her here at a price at 8 to 1.
All right. You're not afraid to pull the trigger, just like your father, bombs away.
Absolutely, the legend.
Let's move to race 8. This is on the outer turf course, 6 furlongs, an allowance for 3 and up. I had trouble with this one. This is the one race I just feel like I'm not in love with anything. I went 3, 4, 9. Where did you go, Rob?
This is always a tough race. That they put these races in here. I mean, the sprints on the grass are, the prices always range. You got state breds going into open company, which is always tough. Listen, Clement Phantom Smoke is going to be right there. That's not breaking news. Was excellent last time out at Saratoga with Irad. Pratt gets aboard this time, showed speed. I mean, just a hard knocking horse. The Weaver horse, I'm funny. When a horse wins at 25 to 1, I'm not betting him back at 5, 6 to 1. I mean, 25 to 1 that day, did race well. but just not for me at that kind of price. The horse I really like in here is the 6 for Norm Cassie. Michelle Hemingway that day, if you were watching Saratoga, she was actually crying in the winner's circle, crying because she won, but crying also they didn't want to lose the horse. Now, listen, they did put the horse where he could win, but Norm Cassie is very good off the claim. The only thing that makes me a little bit nervous, he's not that great in turf sprints, but they sat on this horse for over a month. Saez gets the leg up. I mean, he's a great sprint rider, I think. I think he's great on speed. The horse to the outside, too, the Linda Rice horse. She claimed that off of Mike Maker. One thing about Linda Rice, her numbers are really good in turf sprints. She is excellent with that. The trainer stats off the claim, I mean, James Jerkins had this horse before Maker, but I like him off the claim here, especially with Junior up. She has really good numbers with Junior. So 9 and 6 for me.
All righty, race 9, 5:13 p.m. on the East Coast. And where else would you rather be than the Big A? 5:13 p.m. I mean, you're gonna, if you're there at the Big A at 5:13 on Saturday afternoon, is there any doubt you're seeing the salt of the earth walking around?
And if not, just walk over to the casino.
Oh, you're gonna see the best. The Lord's people. That's where you need to be, especially.
And listen, then maybe a doubleheader, Meadowlands at night or Yonkers. I mean, listen, if you're really, somebody like me, that's what I would do. Aqueduct, Meadowlands, Aqueduct, Yonkers, doubleheader. That's how it's done.
I mean, who's got it better than them? That's the question. Let's go to this one. I'm going to make it short and sweet. It's 7 furlongs on the dirt. I'm going Expressman. I'm not getting creative here. This one was so impressive first time out. I'm just going to lean on Pletcher Magic here. He is going so good this summer. I'm going to go with the 7.
Shocking. Yeah. Again, the Secretariat play. Listen, Expressman, I was up at the spa that weekend. I left so many donations there over those 2 days. It was unbelievable. I wasn't on this one, but I mean, Expressman that day, I mean, he was just phenomenal. I mean, hard to see him getting beat in this kind of race here. Horse I do like as a long shot. I'm going to throw him on the ticket. I like the sheet numbers on Ryan's Cat. I'm a sheets player from time to time, and I really like his numbers. And he's just a horse I'm going to play in here. I mean, wasn't great last time out. Listen, that was a brutal field he was in. But I like him here with his numbers, and especially at 10-1. You might even get 15, 20-1 by the time post time comes around.
All right, the Grade 3 Jockey Club Derby. 1.5 miles on the turf. And once again, a short field, but a strong field. But my guy, my guy who always wins. He's always coming through for me. My main man, Charlie Appleby. I got to go with Nation's Pride. I love Charlie. Always does me right. I know it's chalky. I know I'm single. You folks are listening to me like this guy's crazy. Don't worry. I got strong plays. You press, strong plays. I like Nation's Pride. I've got a lot of pride in this pick. Rob, do you have the pride in Nation's Pride?
I mean, listen, Stu's really laying it out on the limb here. I mean, you're gonna have to play $100 ticket to get what his price is. But no, anyways, listen, this is interesting because Classic Causeway has the speed, right? Not gonna lie, I like the rider change on Classic Causeway. I think that's gonna be a leg up right there. Love the rider change there. He's probably going to float around 8, 9 to 5, right? I mean, Nation's Pride obviously is the horse to beat. The Belmont Derby, he was phenomenal. He was even better at the spa that day. McCulloch, it was not getting close. I mean, let's be honest. He was in hand winning for fun. So in here, that's going to be my play. I'm honestly just going to go 1 and 3 in here. I'm not going to get crazy. I'm not going to go. I got prices in other races. I really like Classic Causeway. I think he's a nice horse, and obviously Nation's Pride is the horse to beat.
All right, let's wrap it up with everybody's favorite maiden special weight on the turf, going 6 furlongs. Gotta love it. State bred race. I know a lot of people are by this point thinking I'm singling Royal Dance. Okay, 7 to 5 morning line. This is where I get creative. This is where I want to be open. I got 2 plays. I know Shinful, I'm not thinking too far out of the box. Richie Schosberg, Irad teaming up here. I think this one is just coming along. It's right there on the numbers. Irad, I think he could power slam somebody down the lane. I love him riding this kind of horse, and I thought last time really showed something, not too far off from the winner's circle. But also, I'm going with the number 6 leader. First time out, Steve Plasaris, Castellano, getting on board. A smart man once said, Javier staying around for the last race. That's always a play. I love it here. This is a sire. Star Guitar sends out turf sprinters like it's going out of style. 16% on the first time turf sprinters. The Dam certainly sent out some turfers. This one, I think at 12-1, certainly going to be in my verticals as well as my horizontals, because I'm leaning on it 12-1 to bring it home. And this $7 pick 6 ticket to the moon, baby. Rob.
Yeah, they're gonna retire off Stu's pick 6. They won't even have enough money to get over the GWB. There used to be a guy at Aqueduct used to sell hot pretzels and soda when you were leaving the track in like a shopping cart with these coals. That was years ago in the 90s when my dad used to take me. But yeah, no, the 6 is interesting in here. I always like to look up what the Dam did. The Dam, first time on the turf, second time out, she won. So I always kind of like that angle. He puts up Javier, which is nice to see. The Lasix. She's definitely an interesting horse at a price. Obviously you guys know, you go to the track all the time. Watch the board in these maiden races. Watch who's being bet in the doubles, see who jumps out as the price is being bet early on. Lemon Road is a horse I like in here. Horatio DePons. I mean, this guy's a sharp trainer, picks up the horse from Chad. Raced one time at Gulfstream, going a mile, had it, that outside post at Gulfstream is brutal. And, he has really great numbers. Plus 180-day layoff. His numbers are through the roof, has really good numbers in turf sprints. This is a horse I really like here, Lemon Road at a price. Listen, Royal Dancer's the horse to beat. She should win this race, but she's got a little bit of, she likes to hang, she likes to finish second, likes to beat a bridesmaid. But yeah, I like the 7 Lemon Road at a price, and obviously Royal Dancer's the horse to beat.
All right, folks, once again, hope you play this pick 6 on Saturday. Belmont at the Big A. It doesn't get any better than this. $1 minimum. I'm thankful to Naira for making $1 minimum pick 6s. I hate the jackpot ones. So everybody, let's have a day Saturday. Let's cash a ticket, as the kids on the street say. And so with that, for my good friend Rob, host of Philly Mongols, go check him out. I'm Stu, StuCast, wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening to this, we're there. We'll see you down the road. Producer Craig, I don't know where we're going, but I know it's going to be money. Off to you, my friend.
We're happy to be partnering up with RaceLens and excited to announce 2 new promotions for new and existing RaceLens customers. New customers sign up for an unlimited RaceLens monthly subscription. Get the first month for only $1. That promo code is In the Money. And if you're a former or current customer, special offer for In the Money Media listeners. Come back and try or extend your current plan with RaceLens and enjoy 40% off of any of the unlimited subscriptions. Promo code for that one, In the Money 40. That's for the 40%. Get it? To learn more, go to inthemoneypodcast.com/RaceLens and know that we did a special RaceLens inspired segment as part of our Belmont-at Aqueduct preview with Matt Vagvolgi earlier in the week. You can find that over at inthemoneypodcast.com or in your podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, etc., etc. Check it out, learn more about RaceLens, and come join the party. Thank you, Alan, very much. And thank all the guests on today's show. Really had a lot of fun bringing you racing from coast to coast. So, yeah, can't do it without the generous contributions of our guests. And we're going to have a lot more content now in this big run-up to the Breeders' Cup. Maybe a little bit less travel for me. Maybe not. I'm going to be going over to Champions Day in a few weeks as well. But anyway, we really appreciate you. I always thank all the listeners and viewers, and that's from the bottom of my heart. Always great to be out at racetracks and get a chance to see people and say hi, answer extra questions, feel free to reach out if you've got any more. The contact page over on inthemoneypodcast.com, that goes right to my email. You can holler at me on Twitter at LoomsBoldly as well. Some very good ways to get in touch and keep in touch. And we always appreciate the feedback and the community, really, we're trying to build here over at In the Money Media. Other thank yous, producer Craig pushing all the right buttons. We always appreciate him. And our founding partners, 10 Strike Racing. You know, we like to root for the purple and black around here. And of course, the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, trfinc.org/players. If you're going to go to the Breeders' Cup, join us for the TRF party on Friday night over at the Griffin Gate. Is it the Griffin Gate Marriott? I think it is. Anyway, all the details will be at trfinc.org/players. Chance to meet and hang out in person, which is always fun. This show has been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel. May you win all your photos.
Just me.